Good evening, everyone. This is John Rollins. We're here for our weekly Strive session. Strive, strategies to remain informed, strategies to remain victorious and empowered. I pray that you've had a great week. I pray that this is starting off, this week has started off well for you, and I pray that it will only get better. And I say that often when I open up with these, but that's my real desire. I want things to get better. We can always experience worse. We can always experience status quo. Let's go for better. Let's be intentional about getting some of the best things that life has to offer for us. Okay, and how do we do that? By our mindset. Okay, we've all heard the phrase, we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it. 90% what happens to us, to 9% of 10% of what happened to us, 90% of how we respond to it. So we get to control that. All right. So I pray that you are making good decisions that will position you to enjoy and reap the benefits of your time while you're here on this earth. All right. Hey, strive. Strategies to remain informed. Strategies to remain victorious. Strategies to remain empowered. And our thought for this evening is towers and refuge. Towers and refuge. And I was thinking that we're here in the state of Florida. We've been blessed. We've been blessed, at least parts of the state, maybe some not as much. Okay, but we're still in the middle of hurricane season, and we've had a pretty docile season right here in Florida, at least in North Central Florida, because there have been times when it's been a whole lot worse. Okay? But I recall, and I was thinking about during times when there is natural disasters, when there is calamity. If we get a tsunami, and we the water's going to flood, we go to a high place, a tower. We want to be above the water level. Okay, and then in a time of a storm, when there's a hurricane or tornado or something like that, we also want to be in a place where we're able to withstand the wind. And so I was thinking that many times the solution for us during times of turbulence, in times of trial or disaster, is to find a safe place. And many times we want to ride out the storm. And I know there are some people who, you see the news reports where the people say, and there could be a number of reasons for this. All right, so I'm not making a statement of judgment. Okay, but there's some people who say, you know what, I'm just going to sit here. I know that I'm going to be in the center of the storm. I know that it's going to come right where I am. I know that I'm going to be impacted. I know that I'm going to probably suffer some loss, but I'm going to ride it out. And many times they may underestimate the power of that storm, and because they've underestimated the power of the storm, many times they end up needing a place of or someone to come in to rescue them. There's this book that I read a lot, and I tell you all about it often. It says pride comes before destruction, or a haughty spirit. In other words, it says we get a warning, and then we get to respond to the warning. Well, I have several thoughts about this idea of seeking refuge. First, did we have federal departments who regulate what we need to use, or the standard that we need to reach in order to build a place that's able to endure a storm? We have regulations, we have ordinances, we have someone who looks at a previous storm and they say, well, this one, then based on how that storm impacted the population, if we're going to rebuild, we need to rebuild to a higher standard, to a better standard, so that in the event of a future storm, then we should be able to endure it. If we build to a certain standard, then we believe that the next storm that comes, the property or the structure that we built, it should be able to withstand. Okay, a standard that will withstand, a standard that will stand firm, regardless of what the next storm may be. I can assure you, I've had a few birthdays. I had more than a few. Okay, I've had a lot of birthdays, and I've gone through a lot of storms. And there's one thing that I've come to understand, that there's probably going to be another storm. All right, so here's what I'm saying. After you have overcome or outlasted or endured one storm, there may have been some things that you learned that will help prepare you for the next storm. So one of the things, you need to be in a safe and secure place. All right. Now, I know that there's always a possibility that there's that unexpected storm, something that came that no one anticipated. I remember reading in the scriptures where they talk about when the disciples were going across the lake, or when Paul was going to Rome. They had some storms that came up unexpectedly. No one anticipated the storm that Paul went through. I don't think anybody anticipated that it was going to last 14 days. All right. So yes, we will experience some things that even with our best preparation, we may not have been able to anticipate that. Okay. But there's some other things that we go through, that there are signs that we could have listened to, signs that we could have observed. There were warnings, there were indications that, hey, this one is going to be pretty rough. All right, you see the radar, and we're talking about just refuge, towers and refuge, but you see the radar, and they're rating this as a category 5. That means this thing is going to be pretty rough. All right, so we need to take some precautions. All right, so where are you going with this, John? So there's a book that I read a lot, and I tell you about this book often. It says that there's some things that have been given to us so that we can be prepared. And there's one thing that I recall, and this means so much to me. Christ was talking to his disciples about a wise person and a foolish person. And he said that the structure that you build, you can have a solid structure, but it has to be built on something that will support that structure. And he gave 2 examples. He says, a person who hears my words and does them is like a person who built their house on a solid foundation, on a rock. He says, when the storms came, when the winds blew and beat against that rock, okay, they were on a strong tower. That tower was able to withstand the onslaught of the storm. Or they found a place of refuge. You know, the scripture tells us that God is our strong tower. He's our place of refuge. Christ also said, now the person who doesn't obey my words, who hears my words but doesn't obey them, he's like an unwise person. He's like a foolish person. He's a person who builds their house on the sand, or she's a person who builds her house on the sand. And the storm's going to come. Like I said, I've learned that once you get through another storm, once you get through a storm, learn something that will prepare you, that will allow you to brace yourself for the next storm. Because there's going to be another storm. Now, it may not be a weather, it may not be a climate condition. Maybe a storm, maybe the economy. I can tell you, I've been around for a while, and I've seen the economy when it was good, and I've seen it when people had to struggle. I've seen when there was a crash, and I've seen it when there was a boom. Okay, it's cyclical. I remember Jim Rohn saying one day, he said, somebody asked him, so Jim Rohn is a motivational speaker, a great thinker, at least he's credited with being a great thinker. And he said some people came and asked him one day, say, Mr. Rohn, what do you think the future is going to be like? Can you travel the world and you speak with people. What do you think is going to happen in the future? And he said, I can tell you definitively, I can tell you without error what's going to happen in the future. And you may have heard me reference this earlier. He says, what comes after summer? And they said, well, fall. He says, I promise you that's not going to change. What comes after fall? He said, winter. I promise you, next year is going to be the same, and the future is going to be the same. In other words, Stuff is cyclical. The Bible even tells us there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, we're going to experience storms. We're going to have trauma. We're going to have calamity. That stuff is going to happen. Maybe the weather. It may be the finances. It may be health. It may be a relationship. Storms are going to come. Okay, but you are still here, which means that you have endured some past storms. What did you learn? What did you learn, and how can you take what you learned to prepare you to endure the next storm? It's coming. It's coming. But you don't have to be a victim of that storm. You don't have to be a victim of. You can put yourself in a strong tower. You can connect your endurance. You can connect your survivorship with a strong tower. You can connect with a place of refuge, with a source of refuge. We don't have to be victims in the storm. The storm's going to come, but we can outlast. Christ said, hey, in this world, you're going to have tribulations. He said, it happened to me. I had to deal with stuff. He says, but be of good cheer. In other words, you can celebrate in the fact that I've overcome the world. I've overcome those attacks, those tribulations, those trials, that turbulence, that confusion. I've overcome them. And because I've overcome, I've equipped you with what you need so that you can overcome as well. I mean, and I find fulfillment in that, knowing that He's given to us, He's laid out for us a pattern or a strategy that we can follow. Listen to the words of the wise. Learn how to treat people. Learn how to take care of ourselves. There are certain things that we can do that will help us to attach ourselves to that place of refuge, to that strong tower, to that place that will endure, outlast the storm. We don't have to be the victims. All right. Hey, I hope this made some sense to somebody. I hope I've given you something, given you an idea that look at what you've gone through, look how you endured, look how you came out, and then take something from that to help brace you, help prepare you for the future. All right. This is a Strive session. Strategies, techniques, principles that you can use that will help you to remain informed, that will help you to remain victorious, that will help you to remain empowered. All right. Hey, if you not have someone to come into your life and to remind you just how awesome you are, I welcome the opportunity to remind you that today, tomorrow, and as long as you remain on this earth, okay, you are important. And don't you ever forget it. All right. This is John. Y'all be blessed. Hopefully we'll see you next week. All right.